Yay, look at all these people
Oh
coming in. Woo! Amazing. Hey everyone, hi. Welcome to TJ's Corner. Hey Robert Yako, oh my gosh, and Brooklyn, and oh my God, we have Brittany back, and Aaron, and Leslie Stevens, Anna, oh my gosh, Luke, Mark, everybody, Alex, what's up? Daniel Dawson, Scott, so many amazing people. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited this is my first I'm considering this is my first like TJ's Corner moment. And I would have this is the perfect person to have as my first guest because they made such a gigantic impact on my 16-year-old self when I was when we met. So anyway, my dear friend, one of my very best friends, it's been almost 24 years that we've known each other.
I know,
which is wild. But so Nancy Wood and I met, well, first of all, this woman was in the original international company as a baby, and I can't wait to hear these stories about this experience, but of a chorus line. She was in both original companies of Avita. It was down between her and Elaine Page for Grisabella in the original company of Cats. Incredible stories there. In the original company of Starlight Express, and in the movie of The Pirates of Penzance with Kevin Kline and Angela Lansbury, and just insane stories, some of which we cannot share on this Zoom class. But without further ado, one of my very best friends, Miss Nancy Wood.
Oh my gosh, hi.
Yay. Welcome, Nancy. I'm so glad to have you. Thank you so much. As I said, Nancy and I met on Hunchback. We both were doing the Festival of Fools at the Disneyland Resort, and something I think is so important to note too, like she had this incredible career, and but has always been about the work and always been about whatever needs to be done at that time. And she was people couldn't believe it. They didn't. I remember at Disney, Nancy, that people didn't believe your resume because,
Wow.
and Michael Betts had to prove it. Michael Betts was out to be like, there was all these bullies, at Disney, and Nancy, they couldn't believe that someone with her resume was working at Disneyland. And she's like, I need a job just like you need a job. So I remember Michael Betts going, like, bringing the Pirates of Penzance movie and bringing the albums and your name being on them and all that. And anyway, Nancy, I remember I was always full of gusto, and I knew I could go after things. And Nancy and I had made friends, but it wasn't really until my high school was doing a production of Pirates of Penzance. And I went up to her and I was like, hey, my performing arts high school is doing the show that you were in the movie for. Would you be interested? Could you help me like with my audition? And would you maybe be interested in participating in the show? And anyway, she ended up like basically co-directing the show. She worked with every single principal. She coached me backstage. Oh, there's Jeanette.
I was one of them.
Jeanette was Maybelle, and I was the Major General.
I was Maybelle.
Yeah. When we fell in love, it was a momentous moment.
I sang really high.
Yes.
Sang beautifully.
Thank you.
But so anyway, that was kind of the beginnings of our relationship, and then Nancy and I realized it was so funny, like even though like we're from two totally different generations, how well we collaborated together. And she was my co-director on my very first kind of big thing for me at the time, production of Cabaret that we both did together. And she has just been such an inspiration to me as an artist, and as a and to Jeanette as well, and definitely challenged me. And yeah, that's right. Nancy had also played Charity in Sweet Charity, and coached Jeanette when Jeanette played the role way back when. So anyway, all that being said, I want to dive into some fun stories, because that's what we get to dish about, some fun things. So let's start kind of at the beginning, Nancy. I know you were a part of like the Fame School kind of back in New York, and in a performing arts school there. And tell us because back when you were auditioning, for things. Tell us about Chorus Line and what that was like going in. She was a non-equity actor, and
Oh.
back in the day where you can kind of crash an equity call, she didn't even know what that was, didn't know what a chorus line was, just went. So tell me about that.
Well, first of all, thank you for this amazing introduction. My goodness gracious, TJ, thank you. So what happened was actually, I wasn't in a performing arts school. No, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And unfortunately, I was like one of the youngest people in the school, and I was clueless. And I kind of got kicked out of school, basically. And I had this one teacher who said, can't act, can't sing, can't dance, better luck next time. So I stayed in Florida for a year, and then a year after that, my family in New York said, what are you doing? You've been dancing since you're 4, come back up to New York. So, and do what your passion is. So I did. And with the support of my family, I started to take dance classes 2 hours a day with Chuck Kelly in New York. And I found a singing teacher, and I took 4 classes a week to learn how to sing, because I thought if I wanted to be on Broadway, which of course was my dream, that I thought maybe I should learn how to sing as well as dance. And at that time they had dancer calls and they had singer calls. So it wasn't, it was just something I really thought would be a valuable thing for me to do, and to learn how to act, because I guess I was pretty bad at acting.
I see. It's so funny, by the way, every single time you mention a name, I see my dear friend Leslie Stevens, who's a collaborator of mine. She keeps like nodding her head yes. Like she was in the original company of La Cage aux Folles, so she was around that same time. You guys probably crossed paths anyway.
Well, it's it's such a different time then. I'm sure Leslie can attest that it was an incredible time in theater. I think I feel very blessed to have been a part of the theater world. And as naive as I was, all I knew is I went to New York and I thought, well, I need to just audition for everything. And I did. I auditioned for everything. In fact, my first off-Broadway show was called The Blind Junkie. Think about it. It was like the most ridiculous show. My cousins came to support me. And then I got into walking around like blinds around 13th Street. It was really hysterical. And then I got into an off-Broadway show called Boy Meets Boy, which was a gay musical, which was really amazing. And at that time, I was just auditioning for everything. And I saw an audition for a chorus line, and I figured it was dancing. I had no clue about the show. And I remember going to the theater.
And at this moment, the show had been open, correct? Like the show.
I was thinking about this. I think it had already moved into, or just getting ready to move into the Shubert Theater, because my audition was at the Shubert Theater.
Right.
And so I snuck in, as it turns out, because I didn't know any better, that it was an equity call. And my number was 188. I'll never forget that. And so I remember going up on the stage, and we all piled in. There were hundreds of people, and we piled like on a line, and I was dead center, and Michael Bennett was holding the audition, didn't know who he was, didn't know anything. I knew nothing. I was so green. And so he went down the line and he was going, any Broadway shows, any off-Broadway shows, how many years dancing, any off-Broadway, it's right down the line. He comes to me and he goes, hello. I was like, oh, hi. And he said, any Broadway shows? Again, no. And at that time I hadn't done any off-Broadway shows. And I said, no. And he said, how many years dancing? And it was like 15 years dancing. He goes, okay, you can stay. And I was like, okay. So I was at the back. And then later I found out that they were only trying to replace or I don't know what the part was, cover or the place for Connie and Richie. So I'm obviously not Asian or Black, but that was my first So anyway, I tried.
It's like, like nowadays that would be in an ad. Like that's such a gigantic waste of time to have all these people who are not appropriate. So there's been some positive changes. Actually, little known fact before you continue on, many of the rules now in Actors Equity came from the saga that was a chorus line and things that Michael Bennett did to his actors. So anyway, many things that are audition related and contract related, performance related, which we'll get into. But Nancy, keep going. So you were asked to stay.
So I kept doing my thing and taking classes, and I think at that time I did get into the show. I think I got my time off. But anyway, my aunt had a manager at that time, and so he said, "Do you want to audition for a chorus line?" Still had never seen the show, nothing, and I said, "Sure, anybody short and dark." So so there I go, and I got an audition, and it was I go over to the Shubert Theater again, and we were down underneath the theater, and I had to go to the bathroom so badly. And I'm like, oh my God, we were like the first 10. And I came out of the bathroom and my first 10 were gone. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. So I ran up the wrong side of the stage. It was instead of stage right. I came up stage left and I ran in and I said, I'm really sorry. And there's Michael Bennett and Bob Evian and anyway, and I just said, I'm so sorry. I was in the bathroom. He says, do it, can you do a time step? And I went, da, 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 and then they said, can you do, double pirouette? I did. It says, okay, stay. I mean, that was how I started it off. And anyway, that was the beginning of many callbacks. And so I couldn't.
You were looking really for the heart of the person. You came in and had a full-on chorus line moment without even knowing it. You know what I mean? And they saw that obviously in you, because from that you booked the show, right?
Well, yeah, it was what Michael Bennett did is he had us all wait. In fact, when we eventually got hired, I literally had flown to Florida to visit my family, and right when I landed, I got the call back from Monday, so I had to turn around and go back. And when we did get hired, when I did get hired and we were all sitting there, we're there in City Hall with 3 companies talking about our experiences. He did this on purpose. He wanted us to really, really know what it's like to really want the job and to really know what it's like to be in an audition. And he had us write, I'm sure you all know this, all right on our mirrors, I am at an audition. He didn't want us to perform. He wanted us to be. And that's when I started to learn how to act. I think I really started to learn what it was like to be in the moment and be truthful and to just be and to be who I am. And the other part about working with Michael Bennett, even though I was like the youngest and naive and I got picked on quite a bit.
And real quick, to tell you, to interject, who she was hired as, this is kind of cool. So it's the original international company. So they had the Broadway company, and then they cast the tour that was going to go all over the world. So Nancy had a pretty cool job, and she was the original Trisha, which was I got to get this job, and they wrote, and she covered all the short people, and including they wrote Connie. When you do the show and you look in the appendix, and they have like swing, things or whatever. Connie McKenzie, which is the white version of Connie Wong in the urgent situation that Connie has to go out of the show, was written for Nancy Wood. So Nancy was the
I know it was written for me. What ended up happening actually, TJ, is that when we were at the Drury Lane in London, which was an amazing experience. I mean, I have to tell you, I was so naive that even when we were flying from Toronto to go to London, I thought everybody was going to look like Oliver Twist. I thought everybody was like Oliver and the Artful Dodger. I was so out of my mind. But anyway, I couldn't believe I was on this Broadway show, and there was a situation that was going on with one of the characters for Maggie, and I was her cover. I was a Connie, Maggie, Christine cover, and then I also covered later on Bibi for a minute and Deanna Morales for a minute. But what happened was, unfortunately, Jennifer, who was our Connie, we were dancing on a rake stage, and we weren't used to it, and she hurt her back. So out of the 6 months, I went on as Connie. So obviously I'm not Asian, and so it was a Connie McKenzie, and that's how that kind of grew out of that. And when they recasted it with the London cast, I guess I'm assuming that they thought, well, I guess it works. So they kept it going because I guess they didn't have enough Asian performers at that time. So that's kind of how that happened.
Now, Bjork Lee, when she sets the show, she makes sure that there's an Asian cover within the cut dancers now to make sure that. Which I think is so wonderful because, obviously it's very, very important, but still a very, very cool thing that's a part of, that's what they send out in the libretto every single time someone does the show.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
That's my friend's part. So, Michael Bennett, like you had obviously like an insane, and you ended up going on the line. You went from a swing wife to going on the line as Christine later on. and taking over. And I want to touch, before we move on into the next show, because we'll have to kind of clip it along because there's so many fun stories, but I want, two things. One, and maybe this can also be related to other shows because you did so much on the West End with Starlight Express and Evita and all that. But the being in a show like that, at that time, you were meeting so many incredible people backstage after the show. And I know that there's pretty incredible stories there. So having a fun anecdote there. I know that people who have worked with Michael Bennett, there have been Sammy, who was the original Paul, God rest his soul, came in and worked on our production of A Chorus Line and consulted, as well as we flew Nancy out from Florida to come out and work on the show as well. And he said, a lot of very open and very public things about how much he loved and also had a lot of tough feelings about Michael Bennett, because Michael Bennett was truly brilliant and did so much to shape how someone would start to learn to act. But also he would say things like, if he came to see the show and he felt you were performing or felt like you're not in it anymore, he would all of a sudden go, "You're now a cut dancer," and he would promote you in the study without any notice. Like, you just all of a sudden were moved around to make you understand that like it can be taken away at any time. You on your which is an interesting technique, but also incredibly abusive. So a lot of people have a lot of wonderful and not so wonderful things to say about him. So I'd love to hear some anecdote about working with a legend like that. And then we'll move on to another show.
Sure. Well, first of all, that's true. That did happen in my company with our Judy. He would come in and he would say, "All right, now you're the understudy and you're going to be on, or you're fired." And there was a lot of that. So it kept us on our toes and never take anything for granted. May he rest in peace, Martin Herzer was our stage manager. And of course, I was so green and naive. I think my family, I was the youngest in the cast, and I've never even done a Broadway show before. It was my first equity job. So they were protective of me too. And there was a situation of, as I was saying, a character, the woman who was playing Maggie at the time. I can't get into that, but she was let go. And on the way to London, I was being groomed to do Maggie. And at the time, I didn't know how to belt. I only know how to sing soprano legit. And so I did actually eventually get that. And there I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to open in London. This is like crazy. What's going on here, right? So what I ended up happening is Martin took me into the other room. First of all, he says, "I never want you to be like these older Koreans. I want you to go on. If you have a sore throat, don't just be a baby. You got to go on." So he was really grooming me a lot, and he really trained me.
Martin, as you just throw out his first name, just casual. Sorry, keep going.
No, he was my stage manager. It was my stage manager. So anyway, what happened was he took me aside, Martin, and he said, "Listen, they rehired this person," and it was had to do with politics. And of course, I didn't know anything about it. We went out on the stage that night. I had to do a performance that night. We were in previews, and he says, and Michael Bennett came out and says, "All right, so I'm just going to get it out in the open. I want the show to be the best that it can be. And so I rehired this person. There you have it." And my whole Chorus Line family were just like, "Oh my God, Nancy, I'm so sorry." And I thought, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to get upset, And so I was picked on a bit, and but I think it made me, in the end, it made me tougher in that regard. Anyway, that was one of those stories.
Excuse me. So transitioning into then your next, so you went onto the line and Christine and played out Chorus Line, and then along comes your husband at the time.
Well,
was a sound designer, is a sound designer.
Well, he's a sound designer now. And if I can kind of jump in there, because I think I know where you're going with this. So what happened was we met during a Chorus Line in England, hence he's English, and so we ended up, he traveled with me in the United States, and Michael Bennett wanted to hire him. And of course he couldn't work. And we ended up getting married on the road. Michael Bennett sent us flowers. We got married in San Francisco, and Pam was she was she was our lead, and so she was my maid of honor. It was a crazy wedding. My chorus line family were at my wedding, and but we finished the tour. I ended up doing two years. What?
Oh no, keep going. Sorry.
Okay. No, it was 2 years because we had 18-month contracts originally. We stayed on for 6 months. That's when I went on the line. Well, my ex-husband was gotten the job, or I thought so, of Evita. So Andrew Lloyd Webber was, the way Andrew Lloyd Webber would start his shows like Jesus Christ Superstar is you put on the radio and see what kind of feedback he got. And he got a lot of feedback from the album, from Evita. So I knew he was going to be working on the sound in London. We decided we were going to go back to London. So there we are in Boston. And so we were having dinner in this restaurant, and sitting right next to me, or us, was Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim.
And Kevin Kline, right?
Oh my God, no, it was just the two of them having a meeting. And they were doing On the 20th Century. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, look who's sitting next to us. That's crazy. He's supposed to be doing Evita. So my ex-husband, he kind of really, if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would have done this, but he says, we must write him a note. So we did. We went back, we wrote him a note, and I said, dear Mr. Prince, my husband is going to be doing the sound. Is there any way I can come and audition for you? I'm working over at, I'm over at the Theater Royale. So we go back to our gorgeous apartment that we were renting in Boston, and the phone rings. Hi, is Nancy Wood there? And I'm like, yes. He says, hi, this is Hal Prince. I'm like, hi. So he says, can you come down tomorrow and audition? I'm like, of course I can. So we quickly call up Eddie Strauss, who was our musical director, who transcribed it from the album. And we went down to the theater, and they were doing On the 20th Century. And in fact, as you mentioned, they did the movie Pirates of Penzance, and years later, Kevin Kline and I talked about this moment because he was in the show. And remembered, everybody says, Hal says, everybody take a break. And there I am on the stage, and I sang Another Suitcase, Another Home. And I was the first person to ever audition for the show. And I went to London, and because I had rights to work there, equity-wise and legally wise, I ended up being in the show.
It's so cool.
Kind of crazy.
Casual. Kevin Kline.
I know. And so yeah, it's so cool. The first person to audition for Evita, and I love too the cat story. That being another first, but before we close out a chorus line, years later, you got to come and be a part of the anniversary show where they had like every cast member that was still alive and able to come in and be a part of that experience, which you can see actually bits of that on YouTube. And I know you got to put on your shoes and your original costume and do one in the aisle of a balcony. And how incredible was that to be a part of that iconic moment with all those people who had been in that show?
I have chills thinking about it because first of all, I was in New York and my career was doing well, and I was there doing a commercial for Avon. And so I just happened to—
Which are amazing, by the way. Her Avon commercials are hysterical. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, thank you. So there I was, and then I don't know how it happened, but I found that they were doing this. So I had my father send me my hat, which has since been crushed. I'm really crushed about that. But anyway, my hat, and then and I got to be in the finale, and I went back. Alice, who was the iconic wardrobe mistress, and she went down to get my original shoes. I was wearing my original finale shoes. I was like, this is crazy. So anyway, it was really special. I can't even explain. It was very moving because also what was really moving personally for me is that I didn't know where I was going to be. I started up in the balcony with my friend Kenny, and we were also given tickets. And so my grandparents, who kind of saw me through all of this growth in my life, it just turned out, with the grace of God and the universe, they were sitting right next to where I was going to be doing one. And I just said to my grandmother, I said, just look to the right. She was literally right next to me. We were crying. We were just crying.
So
it was so dreadful in acting school. And there I am in this here I am, you know, I mean, like, how
Yeah.
did that happen, you know?
Amazing.
So it
Yeah.
was really moving. So anyway, yeah, it was really outrageous to, it was the most emotional, amazing experience, you know, to be doing
Be
this.
a part
And at the end of that, after all that Michael Bennett put me through, um, I was the one person who came over, he started hugging. I was like, well, there you go. That's a what goes around comes around moment. So
That's
I was really
awesome.
grateful. It was really exciting.
So cool to, I mean, how incredible to be a part of that. So then now going to Evita, Nancy was the original, and she was in the, you can see her picture on the album holding her sign, but she was the original cover for The Mistress. And went on, of course, many times for that. But
Yeah.
so tell us about, you know, quickly, kind of encapsulating, I'd love for you to just talk about your Evita journey. So from going from creating that show and working with Angela Weber and all those people, and then going and then taking, being one of the few to go across the pond and bring it to Broadway, what that experience was like.
Well, it was, you know, I feel very blessed to have worked in London, in the West End. London afforded me a lot of opportunities, and the culture of working in the theater I discovered because even though I was in the international company of course most of my work was done in London and the West End. So that's kind of really what I know the best, you know. So my ex was doing the sound. We were like the triple threat. We kept working together. It was crazy experience. And two other actors were asked to join the company if we wanted to in New York. So we decided to do that. I thought that would be a great opportunity. So the difference for me, unfortunately, it was very eye-opening because John and Pepe and my ex and I were kind of in this our own little world, and we were almost pushed out of like the group. It was like became this special group, like we weren't allowed to be in equity meetings. It was very weird. It was a very weird experience. I didn't really quite understand it. And we did a commercial and I wasn't allowed to get points because my husband was working on the show. It was a very strange experience. And the other part of that is I played the mistress a lot in London because my friend Siobhan unfortunately had tonsil issues. So I played the role quite a bit. And then I understudied it in New York. I was hoping to have played it, but Hal Prince's daughter's friend got the part, you know how that works. What can you do? So I felt like when I was in, it's really horrible because I really want to work on Broadway again. But when I was at that time many years ago, I felt like they were waiting in the wings, waiting for me as a first cover to break my foot so that somebody else could go on. The difference was the first time I ever went on in London for The Mistress, I was a nervous wreck. And in the wing was Elaine Page, Joss Ackland, David Essex, rooting me on, the whole cast, as the bed is being pulled out, rooting me on, like, you could do this, you could do this. I mean, it was such a warm and supportive and loving experience. So to go from that to go to New York was very shocking. It was a different, I guess maybe I became very English in that regard, you know, because I feel my experience is that, though years ago, I don't know what it's like now, but years ago is that it was much more family and culturally connected, and the theater was so part of people's lives. And so when I was in New York, it was different. So my ex and I decided to leave, and we decided to go back to London after that experience.
Yeah,
but I don't regret it at all.
Without certain names, how toxic it was, and just how literally people were wanting you to fail. And that's just such an unfortunate experience to be a part of something so iconic, you know what I mean? Like to be a part of musical theater history and to not come out with hardly any positive feelings about that, you know?
I want to be clear, that wasn't everybody. It was just like a select few, you know, I mean,
Sure.
I want to be very clear on that. It wasn't like the whole cast. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a couple of people that I just noticed it, and you know, I just acknowledged that. There were some wonderful people that that were on that show, but we weren't there for very long. We did the tour with, you know, Patty LaPode and Mandy Patinkin, and then came back, and then we moved on from there. So so that was my experience there.
So let's just, since it's also Angela Lloyd Webber, let's talk about your Cats audition. So it was between it was for the original Grisabella was between Elaine Page, brilliant, and Nancy Wood.
Well, let me clarify. It was actually one other person. So when
Oh, sorry. Oh, three people. Yeah.
were three people. Well, I didn't know anything about that, to be honest with you. What happened was I originally auditioned for the show. We had like this days and this whole long day. If I learned the Jellicle Cat one more time, I was going to shoot myself. But we had to sing it over and over and over and over again. And what ended up happening is we had to sing for Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Gillian Lynn, the choreographer. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know how this happened, but she heard me sing or something, and she said, Andrew Lloyd Webber played my audition. I was the first person out of 340 people, and he played, and I sang "Looking Through the Eyes of Love." That's the song I sang.
And
but
he played for you.
He played the piano.
Andrew Lloyd Webber played your audition.
But I didn't get it. You know, I mean.
But that's okay. Who gives the crap?
And I don't think I was sexy enough. I was wearing big old track pants, and I guess I wasn't sexy or whatever. I don't know. I didn't get it. So, but then later on, I found out because my ex was working on the production team for Cats, and that's the only reason why I know that Judi Dench was the original Grisabella, and she backed out of it because she worked with Trevor Nunn, and from the Royal Theater, Shakespeare Theater, and so anyway, I had heard that they were considering it, and it was between me and Elaine Page and somebody else. I don't know who else. So I got that close.
That's amazing.
So I got that close so many times, you know.
Story of every actor's life, but yet like. So you have had quite an incredible career to get that close. So now going into Starlight Express, what an interesting show to be a part of and to originate. That show doesn't get done ever for a multitude of reasons, but you got to originate that. And there's a fun story about you that I want you to tell, just because it's crazy, but about something that they added to the set for you because of something that happened.
Yeah. Well, first let me just explain that I was in the workshop first. They did a workshop first for those who didn't know, and
you're also like the voice. You're the voice of like the little boy too on the recording.
I'm the control voice as well.
The control voice. Yeah.
Yeah. But originally we did the workshop, and Tracy Ullman was in it was in the original Pearl actually. And I played a character called Baedeker, and I was supposed to be in love with the Italian train, was in love with me or something, and so what happened was, I think you should know that when I was younger, I was training for the Junior Olympics roller skating, so I did adagio work, and so I hadn't done this obviously since I'm 9, but there was a trainer there, so I did this adagio. I did an adagio skating, singing an aria. It was ridiculous. So that's on tape somewhere, apparently. I just found that out, that somebody actually has the tape of that. So and then he wore glasses, and he would take off the glasses and go, "Oh, you are beautiful." And then we would start like doing this dance. I don't know. Anyway, it didn't work. So that got scrapped. And anyway, I got hired to play Buffy. And so we created that role. Now, I was one of the more experienced skaters, especially of the women, of the 4 women. And so we were in rehearsal for about 10 weeks total.
Oh,
and
nice.
At this point, we went to go into the theater, which they had been constructing, and it was a 3,000 theater, and they took like 1,000 seats to build this incredible set. So we went up on the stage, and I remember we all looked at the bowl, which was so massive, and everyone started crying. They were so scared. And really, seriously.
I would never audition for that show because thank you. So good on you.
Yeah. Oh man. So we went out so what happened was Rusty comes around, and I was the third in line. It was Pearl, Dinah, me, and then the smoking car, and I could feel it the first time, and I got whipped around, and I went flying off the stage into a 10-foot drop into Trevor Nunn's arms, basically.
Not a bad place to land.
Oh my God. I know I literally really hurt myself. It was black and blue. I was terrified. I was really terrified. And everyone was crying and they said, I'm not going on that stage. And so that's how they created the trapeze to go over the orchestra pit. Because I landed on the banister and I was really hurt. So we had a lot of crazy stories like that.
Oh yeah, I mean the pit net was basically also invented for Nancy Wood.
I said, I'm not doing it.
Flying off into Trevor Nunn's arms, you know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I
had to get in. I had to test a pit net. I thought of you because they had to put one up for Shrek when we had to pass around, and I had to, in my Shrek outfit, get into the pit net and take a photo, like lying down in it. And I was like, I'm so thankful that Nancy Wood took one for the team because now.
Well, I'm glad I'm here to tell the tale.
Yeah.
The team being all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and so then another project I want to talk about, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A, and I want to also get Leslie. I want to talk to her because you guys had a very similar similar start to your careers as well. And I would love for you guys would love each other. You guys
always reminded me of each other.
Yeah.
Both of you.
I don't know where Leslie is on this thing here, but I'm sure I'll meet her in a minute.
Waving at you.
Hi, Leslie, wherever you are.
But anyway, before we do that, so then you're doing a bunch of stuff. Obviously, you had a million other credits. You know, the original Playing Our Song and playing Sonia and that, and just a bunch of other things that you did. But then you were doing film and TV and doing a bunch of incredible things. But then you get to do the Pirates of Penzance film with Angela Lansbury and Linda Ronstadt and Kevin Kline, George Rose. I mean, like the list goes on and on. And getting to work with the icons, luckily still with us and still creating, Graziella Danielle. I mean,
yeah, amazing.
Unbelievable to be a part of that process. So let's chat about that just a little bit. What was that experience like getting hired for that? And what was that set like? And it was, I'm sure, cool for you to reconnect with Kevin Kline and getting that kind of moment. So yeah, talk about that.
Well, I mean, it was fun. We had fun. I mean, we really did. All the daughters like stayed together, you know, in our little makeup gowns and our little Victorian shoes and that sort of thing. And the guys were like, they were all around. I think the hardest thing was that we all got fat because they had this like ongoing, because it was at Shepperton Studios, and we had this ongoing pastry trays. You know, it was England, right? You know, so all our if you watch some of them, like.
You said you can watch
you start to shrink.
Yeah, you can literally say you can watch people's bodies change through the movie.
Like me, smaller and bigger. In the cutting of it, because they had to do inserts. It's so funny.
It's so funny.
It was really amazing for me to watch and to be on a set. I mean, with Linda Ronstadt, oh my gosh, what a voice! Because this was pre-recorded with the Broadway cast. So that's not us singing. Right. We had to work with a click track, which was my first experience.
Aside from Angela Lansbury, she was the only replacement who, in the principals, but all the ensemble were pre-recorded. But Angela Lansbury was the only one that had to record, right?
Well, Linda Ronstadt too was on everybody was pre-recorded. I don't know. I mean,
of the principals.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah. All the originals except for her. Yeah.
But mainly the chorus. You know, the chorus. It was mainly the chorus, and in fact, there's a singing teacher and wonderful actress in New York called Alex Corey, and she was on the Broadway show, and I worked with Alex later on. She played one of the sisters, and they're on the
local. Living in Alex Corey was in that movie?
No, she was her voice.
Right. On Broadway. Yeah. She amazing. She auditioned for our Sound of Music. She lives in Palm Springs out here. I love.
Oh, does she? Oh, I love Alex.
Yeah.
So it was great. I mean, to watch Kevin Kline work, and Rex Smith and Tony Azito was just phenomenal to watch, and everybody, George Rose, and to watch Angela Lansbury. It was such a gracious, beautiful soul. Everybody was so nice. I mean, I don't think anybody wasn't nice at all. And it was just a fun time. We went overtime by 2 months, so we made some nice money. But, even Graziella had said that it was a learning curve for her too, because, choreographing, I remember her saying choreographing on film is very different on stage. So it was interesting. I mean, we had these styrofoam stones that kept moving around, and it was fun. That's all I can really say about that. We had a great time.
Nice when you have a set that's uniformly happy and a great family, and you had some major heavy hitter names in that could have easily not been that way. So that's nice to hear when you come away from hearing that, like, Kevin Kline, Linda Ronstadt, George Rose, Angela Lansbury, and et al. are great to work with. That's amazing.
And to hear Linda Ronstadt sing live, because we had to sing live. Oh my gosh, what a voice! What a voice! I'm so sorry she's suffering right now. But it was.
I know.
I feel very blessed. I know I'm talking about a lot of my experience. I know it's way in the past, and now I'm here in this part of my life, and I feel extremely blessed and lucky, and to have had those experiences. And so thank you for letting me share.
Before we go into I bring on Leslie and then a little Q&A, just talking about that transition, because so many do it. And Leslie, Nancy, see, you guys are mixed up in my head. Nancy ended up having to move back to Florida and take care of her father, who's now since passed, and had to make some life decisions to kind of remove herself from the arts to a degree. You're still very active, as much as life would allow you to be, doing student films, and you got to play Golda in Fiddler, and got to do Into the Woods as a stepmother, and still some things that have kept your juices flowing. But now you're kind of at the point where you're ready to really kind of dive back into the pool, right?
Yeah, it's taken me a lot of soul searching. I actually, because of you, TJ, and you've always been my great supporter and encourager. And by the way, I want to say you coerced me into coming in to do Pirates over at your school.
I did.
Like, you grabbed me by my ear. You're like, okay. But you've always been such a great support for me. I mean, really, I think in life, people, what I love about this industry is that there are no boundaries. We're so different in age, and it doesn't matter, because those listening, I always joke with TJ, I think he was my father in a past life or something like that.
It's so funny. She always calls me for advice, and I'm like, I feel like this should be the other way around. But she's like, TJ, okay, I need your advice. And I was like, all right. But that's what I do love about you, is that your heart and your soul is just so open and humble, and you are all like you. It was hard getting you to come on and agree to do this, because you're like, I don't like talking about myself, and I did a Zoom session to show her how to use Instagram yesterday, because she's like, I don't want to post about myself. And I was like, girl, it's time. You got to get with this program. So
I know. It's like I have to, well, I mean, gone are the VHS tapes, for those who know what those are, even 8-track, okay? I mean, I don't know what to do with them. So I have to get up to speed with this digital world. I mean, I feel very old right now.
But I'm so glad that that life is now at a point where it's allowing you to start. I want to have you out here and do something at 3D. And she was the most beautiful charity and sweet charity. It was that was one of the last things I got. My brother Daniel was in that with her, she's really, really incredible artist. So hopefully we'll have you back out on the West Coast sometime soon. And also you should try your hat at, because you're so good at it. Even though you're such a, I know you love also being like an assistant. Leslie, I also have to that's why you remind me so much of each other. Leslie's like, I don't need to be a choreographer. I'm not trying to be a choreographer. She's still an active performer and dancer and insane and actor and TV and all the same. That's why you guys remind me a lot of each other, but I make her do it because she's so good at it. I'm like, no, you're gonna choreograph this show with me because I love collaborating with that woman. Same way I love collaborating with you. So come out here and direct something
oh my gosh, are you kidding me? That would be awesome. I
know a lot of theaters out here would be blessed to have you. So you should come out and give your go at that. I'll hook you up.
all right. Well, you asked me about my transitioning. I think right now I want to reinvent myself too. And I would absolutely take you up on that, TJ. We've been wanting to collaborate and life has separated us for reasons and it is what it is. But I want to do more film and TV. I think it's always what's great about our field is that we can constantly reinvent ourselves and get out of our own way. If I can get out of my own way and we all get out of our own way and, have that confidence within ourselves and take all that experience so we could do it. So that's kind of my goal right now is to focus more on my film and TV if it will open up for me. That's where
you make money. Oh, sorry.
Where I make money. Yeah, that would be that. What a concept. My gosh.
Great, amazing. Leslie, I'm gonna unmute you for just a second because I'd love for you to chime in. So Leslie was in the original company of Lacage. She played the fiance and had also I need to have you Leslie. We need to do one of these where we just talk about your incredible George Hearn moments and all of the incredible people you've worked with. But how was that start for you? What similarities did you guys have just in that time on Broadway starting up? And the people you were surrounded with and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Have you?
You know what? I just want to say, hey, Nancy, I hope I'm so excited to get to meet you. I hope I get to meet you at some point. And I'll just tell you full on that if you give TJ an opening this big, he will drag you into all kinds of shenanigans. So
it's true. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing now.
Oh, it's fantastic. But I'm just saying, if you toss out I think maybe I just be ready. That's what I'm saying. When you were talking, Nancy, you were talking about being so naive and not really even knowing who you were dealing with exactly or who you were talking to. And even as you were telling the story, it seemed like, you were so fresh and present in meeting Michael Bennett because, you hadn't had time to get in a contraction of not being yourself, so that sounds delightful. And I had a similar experience with Jerry Herman and Officer Lawrence. And though I had looked them up, which used to mean in a book, because there's no internet. And so I looked them up, but I didn't think they would be in the room. I thought they lived in some special, I don't know, they wouldn't walk around, right. Some special building somewhere you would never meet them.
Yeah.
So there were several auditions that went by for Lacage, and I didn't realize that those were the guys. I thought they were just the guys that stood in for the real guy. I don't know what I thought, but I remember making some. Jerry Herman said something sweet to me because I was pretty squirrely, and he said, "Oh well, the composer thinks you're swell or terrific or something." And I looked at him and I went, "Well, the composer's Jerry Herman." And they just tipped their heads like a dog sideways going, is she effing kidding? I had no idea. And then he just smiled and he pointed at himself and he just watched me turn purple because I couldn't believe, I didn't know what he looked like. You know what I mean? It's not like you could look them up online and have a picture, so I didn't know what he looked like.
That's hilarious.
I was like, oh my God, I'm the biggest idiot that ever lived. But I loved hearing your story, Nancy, because and when you were talking about taking classes like Chuck Kelly or those guys, I'm like, oh my God.
Luigi is another one. Oh man.
I feel like I got there. I've often said that I feel like I got there and I got to stick my fingers in the hem of the gown of the great generation leaving,
Yeah.
So I just for a second, and I just didn't, of course, no young person does. You don't think they're going to leave. You think, well, I'll be right back, because, like Bob Fosse, you can't die. You're going to work with me, and I had no idea, that it was a part of a wave that was finishing because I was later in the 80s. So I missed part of that like heyday, but I got a real glimpse and I felt so grateful,
Yeah, you were like on the tail end of it, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to end here pretty quickly because we have normally our 3 o'clock class can run a little long because we have usually nothing scheduled after this today, unusually because the guy's in Australia. It's gonna be one starting at 4, so we have to get off in a couple minutes. But do we have any last or any questions at all for Nancy or anything? Anyone, just raise your hand if you have anything at all. Daniel Dawson.
I miss you so much. I love you. That's it. All I wanted to say.
Wait, Daniel.
Me too.
I love the Dawson family. Oh my goodness gracious.
I love you, Nancy, so much.
So great to see you. I'll be out there when this is all over. I'll be out there.
Any other questions?
Let's just have a big round of applause for Nancy and TJ for sure.
Gigi, we have a question.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, Jean Kaufman, one of my loves, also a part of the Chorus Line family. Her husband won a Tony for writing Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. They're just
Gosh.
power couple.
That's right.
No big deal.
No big deal. So Jean, what's up?
I wrote it in the chat on the side.
Hell yeah, she goes, can we do a senior citizen version of a Chorus Line? I'm all about it. All about it.
Okay.
Hell yes.
Okay.
I'm all about it. Oh my God, I love it. You were, Jean, you played, was it BB? Yeah, BB.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing, so good. Any other, last question before we have to depart, anyone? Okay, I think we're good. You guys, a big virtual round of applause for the.
Oh, thank you. Thank you everybody for watching.
Yes.